I am Hans Frank. I'm a member of the Green Team here, and I'm happy to introduce Hurricane Swartz. That doesn't take too much of an introduction, but let me try one, and that is this. He is a miracle worker. Nobody can predict the weather perfectly. When you predict it with 50% accuracy, you are already a genius, and he does better than that. He has seen the weather all over the country and reporting on it, and he will talk about that a little bit. I lived in northern Delaware, and for years and years we were watching the evening news and learned about the weather. Without Hurricane Swartz, tomorrow would not happen. That's what I learned. Okay, the sun would rise probably at the appointed time, but we didn't know whether it would be wet or dry, windy or quiet, sunny or rainy. We would not know. Now this guy, when he sees a cloud over Michigan, a small gray cloud, he predicts a storm over Philadelphia. Now few people can do that. Weather forecasts are tricky, and we always complain that it's never the same thing. But I want to report to you that there's one weather station. It's in Belgium. The name is Ukkel, where they have 100% accuracy. And their weather forecast is dry between showers. Please welcome our distinguished guest, Glenn Swartz.
Thank you. Is this on? Yeah? Okay. Thanks for the invitation here. This is not the first time that I've been in Maritzburg. I don't remember the exact year. Does anybody remember seeing me before, like 15, 20 years ago? Okay. Because I don't remember where I was 15, 20 years ago. Other than this building and this room is familiar to me. And I want to talk about the past, the present, and the future. This is a little bit of my past here. I want to start with this beautiful picture from one of my favorite spots, the beach in Aruba. And what you'll notice, you see that chair there? There's actually a restaurant where you can have dinner right at the beach and right at sunset. It's like one of the most beautiful things I've ever experienced. I mean, the food was just okay, but the view is incredible. And so there is beauty, and there always has been beauty. And if we concentrate when we see it, you can appreciate it a little bit, because there are storms of various types. This again is Aruba. This is obviously the sunset. And so I'm going to talk about storms of
Randy Wise Smile CE says, your dental appointment is coming up.
Serious. They make jokes at me. And to talk about your grandchildren's future also, because I'm sure you care about this. And it might be that your grandchildren don't even think about some of these subjects. There's so much going on in the world. There's so many issues, so many problems, that sometimes what's in front of us and what we look at and what we feel can be important too. Yeah, it's not where I started with the weather, but it may have been where I started with the bow ties. I didn't even remember, obviously, doing this until I found a picture at my parents' place, and when I retired, they put it on Channel 10 just to make fun of me. But I grew up in Philadelphia. I was born in South Philly, raised in Mount Airy, went to high school at Central, college at Penn State, so I'm as local as you get. And as I was growing up, I watched these three guys. Wally Kinnan, my favorite. Herb Clark, and Dr. Francis Davis. And they helped inspire me. The problem was, they're all on at the same time. Back in those days, we did not have remote controls. So I had to sit in front of the TV to change the channels that I was so obsessed with what they were going to say about the weather. And they didn't always say the same thing, and they certainly were not always right. I mean, we have higher standards now. Back in those days, they couldn't even forecast for 3 days, let alone 10, like I have done in the past. But I saw these guys, I learned about weather in the 5th grade, and that's when I decided I wanted to be a meteorologist. Not necessarily on TV, but the weather was so fascinating to me, coming home from work, looking up at the sky, and recognizing the clouds. And it's like a gift that I was given to have this mission from the time I was a child. And not too many people get the opportunity to do their dream job and have their dream career in their hometown, at least for a part of it. Well, this was me, believe it or not. Canary yellow, double breast. I interned at Channel 6 with this guy, Jim O'Brien, who, and this is why I did not try TV at first, because this guy was so damn great that I thought, I can't do what he does. Look, he looks like a movie star. He's got the voice of a professional disc jockey, which he was. He's got the quickest wit that you can imagine. How could I ever picture myself doing anything like that? But anyway, I did intern at Channel 6 just to learn about TV, get some experience while I was between my junior and senior year. And then again, when Jim started, I was just graduating from Penn State. The graduation ceremony was coming up in a couple of weeks. And I had a job arranged at this company that later got the name of AccuWeather. It wasn't even AccuWeather back then. There was like five of us. And they didn't even do work in the summertime, so I had the summer off. So this is 1972. And this guy is just starting his TV career. He was a radio disc jockey. What's he know about weather? And then the worst hurricane and flooding in the history of Pennsylvania, Hurricane Agnes, comes. And he was having all kind of trouble. And I'm sitting home watching, not doing anything. I'm just totally frustrated. So I called up the station. And I said, look, I don't have to go to work until September, and this guy is new. I interned there last year, so you know who I am. Let me help for the summer. And at first, he said, I don't need any help. But they talked him into it because I had already been there. And then by the end of the summer, after making his forecast every day and putting the magnetic symbols on the map, he said, well, now what am I going to do? And I said, well, you know, we can call you and tell you what the forecast is and what's going to happen and why. He said, really? How much is that going to cost? I don't know. So I called up my future boss. I told him that what Jim wanted, and he gave me a price. I came down to tell Jim, this is what the price is. Says, let me check. Goes to his office. And he comes back and he says, all right, we got a deal. So as a matter of fact, they would have paid double. And that is how AccuWeather is on Channel 6 to this day. And there I am again. Another fashion statement. You'll notice this theme. And there's the president of AccuWeather, Joel Myers, the vice president, Elliot Abrams, who's on KYW radio forever. All three of us at Central High School in Philadelphia. And these are the weather maps back in the day. And I got my name in the paper. And I could afford new pants by then, even though I wasn't getting paid very much. And so that was a great place to start in a way, because I got to learn about forecasting, not just in a classroom, but in real life. And these two guys knew a hell of a lot, and I learned a hell of a lot. Even though I got paid nothing, I'm working midnight shifts 6 days a week, but it's worth it. And later on, I got to go to the National Weather Service. They had a hiring freeze when I first came out of college, so that wasn't even a consideration. And eventually got to Atlanta. And my title there was Disaster Preparedness Meteorologist. And again, there I am, another fashion statement. And these are the civil defense people, now known as emergency management. And my job was to work with them to help prepare for severe weather, to work with the media to help them prepare for severe weather. I was the middleman, in effect, along with being a forecaster. And I'd like to show this and talk about this because you remember this horrible, tragic flood that happened in Texas last year. The forecast was right. The warnings were out. But the people who were in the vulnerable
Carl
areas
Dupold says,
didn't.
Marple Newtown JC reunion, follow up.
Where is this coming from? This is my conscience talking to me. So yeah, I'm talking about something serious, and so there was a problem there, and people died because of that. A lot of people and a lot of children. And you know what was, at least one of the things that was missing was one of these guys, because there were no longer anybody in that position in that area in Texas because of cutbacks from the government. And that's part of what happens. That was my responsibility. If I had that job in Texas and was still on duty, I'd be damn well sure that those people in that most vulnerable area would find out about it somehow. So it's still important, not just to get the forecast right, but to get it to the people who need it. And so that's what got me eventually into TV. I was doing this in Atlanta for the Weather Service, and I was kind of the spokesman. So one day, there was a hurricane approaching the coast. It was going to come up toward Atlanta. One of the stations did not have a meteorologist, so they brought a crew out to the Weather Service to interview me live on the 11 o'clock news at the top. And I went and I did that. And the next morning, the news director called me up and asked me if I'm interested in a career in television. I had not applied. I had not considered applying because I was so intimidated by seeing Jim O'Brien. I didn't realize Jim O'Brien was like the best in the whole country. I thought they were all like that. And so how am I going to compete? Well, eventually, I came down the next morning, did my audition, and the news director said, I want to give you a job on TV. Well, you know your business. If you think I can do it, maybe I can do it. I was young, I was single. If I didn't try it now, who knows? I may have second thoughts the rest of my life. So I tried it. And here I was in Atlanta, recruited, 1979, with the beard, which nobody had at the time, not just in Atlanta, but this is not like today where all these guys that age are showing beards. And we're talking about the Deep South. And this little guy from Philadelphia is going on Atlanta television. The first thing they did was they sent me to a speech therapist to get rid of my Philadelphia accent. Swear to God. Now, if I'm reading something, I can do it. I can talk like a human of unknown origin. But in your weather, you're just talking. You don't know what word is coming next, so you can't prepare for those words coming out. And so the accent was there, and the beard was there, and so they told me I kind of had a limited future in Atlanta. So we like your work, but we wouldn't mind if you found something else somewhere. And so I did, and that was in Cincinnati. And this ended up being my storm number one. So I got the offer to be the main weather person there. I was the weekend guy in Atlanta. So I thought Cincinnati is a pretty big city, a top job at a network station, and I didn't realize it was a terrible station. But just wearing regular clothes, still with the beard. So, again, nobody's wearing beards in television. So as I am getting ready to start, my news director, the boss, and the big boss, the general manager, and I have breakfast with the #1 consultant in television in the entire country. His name is Frank Magid. And his company, Frank Magid and Associates, they did consulting for half the TV stations in the country. I mean, this guy was the man. And we're sitting at breakfast, and he says to me, what about the beard? Yeah, people don't like that on TV. And I said, well, okay, how do you know that? Have you done any studies or researching? He said, well, yeah, we did a study in Milwaukee in the 50s. And that's how they determined how every single TV station in the country is going to set up their news team. No wonder nobody had beards, because Frank Magid said he didn't like them. So my boss says, Frank, I think you're full of, you know what? And he used that word, right, to Frank Magid. He says, I like the beard, he's going to keep it. So I kept it. And it didn't necessarily help. And one day, again, this was a third place station in a 3-station market, and way down. So first they got rid of the sports guy, and then the news guy. So we ended up with a news team of Springer, Shapiro, and Swartz in Cincinnati. Now, they had a certain Jewish population, but not that big. So first, Shapiro got canned. And the first name you might be familiar with, his name was Jerry Springer. Brilliant guy. Brilliant guy. He was the mayor of Cincinnati before he came to this station. And you know why he was no longer mayor? He got arrested for writing a check to a prostitute. The mayor of the city. So I used to kid him. I said, you know, if they had ATMs back then, you'd still be mayor. And I thought we got along great, but no. He had a buddy who was a disc jockey and who wanted to do weather, so he saw to it that I was thrown out the door so his friend could do the weather. So I was on unemployment for the first time, but not the only time. So from there, I went back to Atlanta and got to work at the Weather Channel, which had started just a couple years earlier. And they had offered me a job at the beginning, but I had a nice job already in Atlanta. But they hired me to work on a hurricane documentary. And so back then, there was hardly any video to put in a documentary. In the meantime, at the Weather Channel, they had a photographer, but the only thing he ever shot was a promo or commercials. He never went outside the front door to even take a picture of a cloud or the rain or snow. This is the Weather Channel. All they showed was maps. So there was a hurricane that was approaching the coast, and Atlanta's not that far from the coast, like a 5-hour drive. I said, let me go down there, take some video, get blown around in a storm, and come back and I'll have some of the video for my documentary. Well, the only reason I was really allowed because this was Labor Day weekend and all the big bosses were on vacation already. So it was like the fourth guy in line who approved it. So I got the photographer and we drove down to the beach and got blown around. This is Hurricane Elena, 1985. And that made me the first storm chaser of the Weather Channel. A lot of you are, I'm sure, familiar with Jim Cantori. I was the guy before him.
Carl Dupold says, Marple Newtown JC reunion, follow up.
I was just going to go down to the coast, shoot it, and go back, maybe even the same day. It stalls. It's spinning around. Well, it's spinning around, and it's so big, it is now flooding Tampa, even though the storm's so far offshore. So what do? We had to go in the car, go around the bend of Florida, down to Tampa, and shoot some of the flooding. And on our way, ended up shooting that. So we shoot the flooding in Tampa. And it's still stalled. And now, we don't have satellite trucks back then. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. We had nothing. And if I want to talk to the hurricane expert back at the Weather Channel, John Hope, I got to find the phone booth and call collect. Hey, John, what the hell's happening with this storm? So we had a little problem because we had to shoot this on videotape and then put it on a plane to go back to Atlanta for them to put it on TV. Problem is that Tampa airport's flooded. So none of that. We had to drive to Orlando, put the tape on a plane, drive back to Tampa, shoot some more stuff, drive back to Orlando, put it on a plane, back and forth, and the storm is still stalled. And finally, it starts moving. But it doesn't move toward Tampa. It moves the other way. So now it's headed toward New Orleans. So I got to get in the car, drive all the way around Florida, and now this is in the middle of the night. Everything is deserted. Nobody's on the roads. As we're crossing the bridge over Mobile Bay, the wind is so strong, the car is shaking. And it's kind of scary. And I'm driving, and I look over my photographer next to me. I guess they can get through anything. So we finally chased the hurricane, got some video of it, had to stay in the church and sleep on the benches with a lot of other people who had to evacuate because this was now a Category 3 hurricane. This was serious stuff. When we finally get back to Atlanta, 1 week and 3,000 miles later, and boy, were they mad because the big bosses never approved it to begin with. And look, you know how much money this cost us? Until they saw the ratings. And then they decided, you know, this like television thing works with pictures real nicely. Like, what a concept. And so that's how they started chasing hurricanes and other storms. Now I kid them, they go out and they chase snow flurries. And all sorts of other stations do that. But that's how I ended up with this, a nickname. I went to New York City, the #1 market, and I had the rights to that video that I shot. So one day, I showed a video, me getting blown around just before the weather segment, and then the anchorman says, and now with the weather, here's Glenn Hurricane Swartz. Just a total ad-lib, totally from left field. He didn't check with me ahead of time, see if it was okay. Didn't check with his bosses, see if it was okay. Didn't check with the promo people to see if it was okay. He just called me that, and it immediately stuck. Like the next day, cops were yelling across the street, "Hey, Hurricane." Okay, so that's good. Still with the regular tie, though, and still with the beard. Well, that's maybe how I got hired there, because when they brought me up for the interview, they said, like, the chief reason that they wanted to hire me is that I looked so New York. So where Atlanta was not for me, New York, okay, maybe. So that worked for a while, but not permanently. So I lost that job too. But one of the things that I always liked to do was to explain the weather, to explain it in terms that people understood. So how else do you explain the eye wall and the eye of a hurricane but a bagel, especially in New York? So that still didn't help me. So now I end up in Raleigh after getting fired twice and on unemployment twice. Now, no nickname, regular tie, still the beard. Well, I thought that was a nice, safe job. I was doing weekends there. The #1 guy was this meteorological legend from Pennsylvania. And we got along great. We were best friends. And after 2 years of my contract was coming up, he writes out an evaluation. He's all nice things and whatever. I get called into the news director's office. He has this paper in front of him, and he basically says, this doesn't mean anything. We're not renewing your contract. So why? Well, I can't tell you. You'll have to go talk to the big boss upstairs. So I go upstairs into the general manager's office. It's maybe like half the size of this auditorium, and it's just him and me across the desk. Why are you not renewing my contract? It's because you're not pretty. Can you imagine him saying that to a woman? Or in today's world, saying it to a man either. This was in 1980, 92. Okay, so insulted maybe a little, but I know that, I'm not Jim O'Brien. And I appreciate the honesty. It's like, okay, if my appearance is a negative thing, let's put that in the back of your head. So now I'm out of work for the third time. I'm on unemployment for the third time. I am filling out my papers to go back to the National Weather Service. They won't fire me because I'm not pretty enough. And then I end up going to Fort Myers to work with my best friend, who calls me up one day and says, hey, you want to work a hurricane? I said, sure. So they sent me a plane ticket. I flew down there, got off the plane. His wife picked me up, took me to the station. We're broadcasting Hurricane Andrew, 30 hours straight. So they kept me. And I worked there for 2 years. Went over to the East Coast, worked in Palm Beach for a while, and then got the phone call from Philadelphia. The boss, the news director, he was the assistant news director in Raleigh when I was there. So he knew me. He knew what I was about. He knew I was from Philly. He knew the nickname. And then he said, look, we're switching from CBS to NBC, and we have to add shows on the weekend, so we have to hire somebody, so I want you to come, be my first hire. But there's 2 conditions. Well, you see the first one. We're going to call you Hurricane. We're going to use the nickname, okay? That's number 1. And number 2, I want you to wear bow ties. Bow ties. He said, we got this Maine weather guy. His name is John Bellaris. And I'm sure a lot of you remember John Bellaris. And he says, well, yeah, I know John. He says, he is a fashion icon. He wears these $2,000 suits. He could be on the cover of GQ magazine. He is so handsome. The women are crazy for him. I picture he was the anti-Bellaris. But instead of being insulted, I saw the genius of it. So now I am going to be paired with the number 1 weather person in town. No problem with that. We got along great. And now my looks are going to have a kind of positive slant because I'm the only one wearing the bow tie. So now I have an identity again. I'm not the bearded guy. I'm the bow tie guy. And he wanted me to be a total nerd. He wanted me to wear white shirts, pocket protectors, the whole thing. I said, I'll wear the bow tie. I'm going to create my own fashion. And that sort of worked from 1995 to 2022. That worked out pretty nicely. And I got to work with John Bellaris. We got to do all kind of fun stuff together, including a whole series of commercials, takeoffs of Seinfeld. They built an entire replica of the diner in one of our studios, and we shot all these commercials, and they won like national awards. And what's wrong with getting next to this guy? And I got well known real fast. That plus the blizzard in 96 didn't hurt 2 months after I got hired. And so I ended up in 1996, 1 year after I got hired, I make the best of Philly. And why? Best nerd. The anti-Polaris. It worked. The bow tie wearing, unapologetically unhip weather geek. Okay, I accept. Whatever gets me into Philly magazine, I get to throw out the first pitch at Phillies games. I get my own jerseys. They give me their own bow tie. I get to ring the bell for the Sixers game in my hometown. This is incredible. I get to give the forecast to the Eagles when they win the Super Bowl, and the vice president asked for me because there was a forecast for rain for Wednesday. They wanted to do the parade Wednesday. So Monday, my boss comes in. He says, the vice president wants to talk to you. They're worried about rain for Wednesday. They really want to have the parade Wednesday. You know, people have their plane tickets already, the hotel reservations, families, everybody wants out. So I call him up. I said, look, you cannot do this. If you attempt to have a parade on Wednesday, it will be a disaster. It's going to rain every minute of the day. It's going to be cold. It's going to be windy. Everybody is going to be miserable. So they postponed it to Thursday. Wednesday, of course, ended up being horrible. Thursday was cold but tolerable. And there is a note and football from the Phillies. Safe to say you saved the parade. So, boy, if that isn't one of the highlights of my life. And when I finally retired, I get to the front page of the Daily News without a scandal. For something good. Helped us weather the worst for nearly 3 decades. So that is, again, who gets to do that? So now what? Now I get to do something else. And I spent my whole career forecasting the weather. But now there's something more important than tomorrow's weather. Sorry, kid, but thanks to my selfishness, you'll face unspeakable suffering from climate change during your lifetime. Okay. Is there any good news? Yeah, I'll be dead by now. And this is the kind of thing that really creates problems. It's not just about science. It's about society. It's about preparation. It's about politics. It's about everything but science. So we had all of these incredible weather disasters. I'm sure you're aware of them. You see them on the news or on your phones practically every week, all over the world. Those fires in California, the hill country floods. Everything that's bad is worse because of the climate warming. There's Melissa, 190 mile an hour. Now they upped it to 190, which in my view, that would make it a category 6. And that's what they need to do because these hurricanes are strengthening faster and more than ever. That is Melissa, and that is Jamaica. And my God, if that was Miami or Tampa or New Orleans, oh, look at that. So we have all kind of increased disasters now, billion-dollar disasters of different types all over the country. So this is what happened. This is the same person. Natural and juiced on steroids. He didn't need to do that. He was a Hall of Fame player just like that. So we had to do this. And It's so obvious, right? That's what it's like with the weather. And now the earth is juiced. Instead of steroids, we got warmth, extra warmth. What does extra warmth do? It adds extra moisture. It adds to more heat waves. It adds to droughts. It helps increase fires. And it's all over the world. So how do we feel about that? Well, meteorologists, we're used to the weather changing. And so for many, many years, when they were first talking about climate change, I was kind of suspicious about the science. 20 years ago, I got more suspicious. And then 10 years ago, which is really 15 years ago, became certain. This is what you do in science. You look at evidence, and the evidence changes and becomes stronger, then you have to change your outlook on it. It's so obvious, like Barry Bonds, like a 4-year-old can tell, and a 4-year-old can tell this. That's carbon dioxide, and that's temperature going up since 1880. Why would somebody argue about that? This is the current level of CO2. This is going back 800,000 years. Nearly 1 million years. Never been close. Never changed this fast. But CO2, really, it's just a trace gas. It's just a little bit in the atmosphere, and that's what you hear some people say. Well, they can't possibly. Well, without CO2, the Earth's temperature would be near 0. With CO2, it's 60. Think that little bit of gas is important? That little bit of poison can kill you too. It's not about the quantity of it. It's about what the results are. So carbon dioxide is doing this. And there it is. There was a goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial, and we've pretty much already gone past there. And not only gone past there, we are now accelerating the problem. So this is the level of warming. So it used to be like 0.2 of a degree per decade. Now it's twice that. It's warming at twice the rate that it used to. And just last week, the United Nations World Meteorological Organization puts out a review every year of the state of the global climate, and this was their key graphic. When the Earth is balanced, there's as much energy leaving as what comes in. You get more coming in than going out, the Earth warms. And the bigger that discrepancy is, the more it warms. And now, it's more out of balance than any other time in observed history. So it's warming, and there's a reason for it. This is not just about numbers. This is about what is happening. And this has been known for a long time. Look at that. Back in 1982, here's that forecast of carbon dioxide going up and temperature going up with it. Must have been some really brilliant scientists that thought of that. Yeah, they were from Exxon. 1982. And in 2026, they're still trying to prevent any kind of changes that would reduce the amount of CO2, even though they knew this 40 plus years ago. It's like the tobacco thing. The companies knew about the cancer threat, but they tried to keep it quiet for decades. And millions of people died as a result of that. So there's the temperature rising, carbon dioxide rising, methane, which is also a pretty powerful greenhouse gas, nitrous oxide rising. I mean, the whole climate of the Earth is significantly different than 10, 20 years ago. And it's just basic physics. The increase of temperature, there's more water vapor. So therefore, there's going to be more flooding. And the amount of moisture, it can be measured by something called precipitable water. And this is the area that most of the world lives in. And look how that has gone up since like 2010. It's literally off the chart. They had to change the chart to get up as high as it was. And the number of heavy downpours, as a result, not in some third world country, the third world state of Pennsylvania, increasing 360% since the 50s, number 3 in the entire country. So, the statement, when it rains, it pours, that's true now. So since 2010, when that acceleration started, we've had our wettest hour, wettest day, wettest month, wettest year. You would think everybody would be accepting this. The science has been around forever. But this was 2022, 26% were alarmed, 27% concerned. And there's a whole bunch of folks over here, not a majority, but a loud minority. I'm there. And the more data that comes in, the more that comes in, the more this is valid. There's a difference between being alarmed and being an alarmist. An alarmist is alarmed without reason. Being alarmed for a good reason is being reasonable. Now, the percent of alarmed has gone up, but a lot of these doubtful and dismissive people haven't really changed their minds. I add 2 categories here. There are people way beyond me who think that it's over, even some climate scientists, and they're referred to as doomers. But that doesn't help because, hey, if we're doomed, what difference does it make if we lower our carbon dioxide? And then there's people beyond dismissive who don't just not talk about it. They try to sabotage any kind of So the doomers write books like that. The saboteurs, they fight wind and solar and electric vehicles. So as George Patton said, lead, follow, or get out of the way. That's my philosophy. And both of those extremes, neither of them help. But what are we fighting? We're fighting the richest and most powerful industry ever. If the horse and buggy industry was made up of billionaires lobbying Congress, we'd still be in horse and buggies. If the telephone companies couldn't adapt, we'd still be using rotary phones. If the typewriter companies, it's progress, it's technology. We're making life better and easier and cheaper. So now we have cars, cell phones, computers. Life is better. But the problem is nobody owns the sun. So who's going to make a profit on those sun's rays? So going to make billions in order to give that money to Congress to change the laws. Nobody owns the sun. Nobody owns the wind. You can't make big profits on that either. So where are the billionaires? So we need a renewable revolution. We've had the Industrial Revolution. That really helped things, created some problems, but it helped things. And now we need a renewable revolution because that sun is free. That wind is free. And we can take advantage of it, and it's getting cheaper all the time. But will it be a revolution or a crawl? In the meantime, there's more evidence that we're going to have floods, hurricanes, coastal flooding with sea level rise, many records broken, areas that never flooded before will flood. But we know What works? We have the technology. Keeps getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So we have the opportunity to be more resilient and adapt, and it's going to cost more to do nothing. It's going to cost your grandchildren loads and loads and loads of money. You think your electric bills are high now? Just wait. There is no planet B. You know, we got to do what we can here. We're not going to turn off the spigot completely. We're not going to shut down civilization. But every 1/10 of a degree of warming that we prevent is a victory. So we can do it. And there are books and people who have ideas about that. And that's my car, parked right outside. I had to drive an hour to get here. I did not use 1 drop of gas. You want a cheap SUV or EV? That's fine. In China, they make really nice electric vehicles for now less than $20,000. What happens if you can get a car for half price? You can get your electricity for half price or less. Maybe you don't have to worry about the politics. Do it for your budget. Same thing with solar panels. The price is going down like 90% and still going. So what if it's a big hoax and we create a better world for nothing? But it's not a big hoax. And we want to create a better world for our children and grandchildren. And the best thing that we can do, according to some of the top climate scientists, is to just talk about it. Talk to your families, talk to your friends, talk to your Congress people. Because there are solutions to this, and solutions that get cheaper all the time. And it's just stuff that's getting in the way. Just like the tobacco industry was fighting, and their term was, doubt is our product. And that's what the climate deniers try to do. They're not trying to convince you that it's not warming. Well, it's warming, but that's just part of the cycle. But that's not. That's like the tobacco industry saying if you got a filtered cigarette, that's much healthier than a regular cigarette. So go back, spread the word, try to make the world a little bit better for your children and your grandchildren. Okay. Yeah. No.
How about now?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I'll be on this side if you have questions, and Hans will be on the other side. So.
Thanks for coming by. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the impact of when folks were relegated to stay indoors during COVID, what that might have done to the environments.
Yeah, there actually is very clear evidence that the amount of carbon dioxide went down briefly, temperature rise stopped briefly. It has an immediate impact. It really does. And now with the price of gas being so high, there are parts of the world already suffering, and they're restricting travel like COVID. And there may be some impacts on that that are felt worldwide because there'll be fewer cars on the road.
Any other questions?
Hi, Hurricane. I really always enjoyed your shows and learned a lot about weather. My question is, I think you've answered it, but we just went through a lot of horrific snow and rain and all that. Does that mean we're going to have a really hot summer? I would trust whatever you tell me.
Well, not necessarily. What's interesting is, though, as cold and snowy as our winter was, overall, the continental United States had the second warmest winter ever recorded, because there's like a dozen states out west that had their warmest winters ever. So there are these extremes that happen, and more extremes will happen. There was a place in Antarctica that was 106 below zero last month. That was an all-time record. Alaska had cold records, but it's called global warming, not regional warming or local warming. Overall, the number of record highs is like 10 times the record lows. Now, what we have today is developing in the Pacific called the El Nino, and it's going to be a strong one, partly because of the climate change. Strong El Ninos tend to suppress hurricane seasons in the Atlantic and also tend to not have real hot summers. It tends to lead to warmer winters. So if this continues to next winter, I don't think next winter will be anything like what this winter has been.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting. I just wanted to know, how do we talk to people who tell us that this has always been, climate always goes up and down? They don't seem to understand the difference between a pattern of, it's weather.
Yeah.
And how do you, I would like to know how you try to explain this to people.
Yeah, it took me a long time too, and other meteorologists, it took even longer than with me, because we're used to the weather going up and down, and records remain to be broken, and average normal is just the average of extremes. That's another one of my sayings. So yeah, we're used to extremes. We're used to records. But we're breaking records. To break a record by a degree or two, okay, that's interesting, maybe. You break it by 10? To have the worst flooding ever? To have the greatest amount of rain in a short period of time? Philadelphia's all-time record for one day is like 7 inches. In Spain, they had 20 inches in 6 hours one time, a couple years ago, with this horrendous flood. If it can happen in Spain, it can happen here too. Can you imagine that? 20 inches of rain in 6 hours here? Anywhere around here. So a lot of people have their minds closed, and you can't reach them worth anything. Those people all the way on the right side of that scale. It's the people that in between, that what we call the lukewarmers. So yeah, they accept that the climate's changing, but maybe it's not such a big deal. So let's show them where some of this information is. One of the best places is called skeptical science, where every single argument that you could think of, more than 100, is rebuffed right there in simple terms and also in technical if you're a scientist. The bottom line is, yeah, the weather has changed. The climate has changed. It's never changed so fast. Evolution happens, but it takes time. You can't do that CO2 put straight up and have animals and humans and fish and oceans react like they might have millions of years ago. A rapid warming might have taken 1,000 years. Now it takes 50. That's a big difference. And that's the biggest part of the problem, is how fast it's happening. Yeah.
Further question?
Thank you so much for today. You've explained it so well. I really, really understand now exactly what the problem is. But could you pick 3 programs that you think would be feasible for us to say, these are things we need to do that would really help this situation?
Well, the best thing is to elect the people who accept the science. Because you know, we had some nice programs, and they've been canceled or stopped. I mean, wind energy was a great thing, and that's here. Other parts of the world are doing okay, and even improving. China is doing amazing things with solar energy and wind energy and nuclear energy and hydrothermal. I mean, there are ways to get energy without putting these nasty chemicals up in the atmosphere. So the first thing is to get the right people elected who will actually listen to scientists and not just, I don't see any evidence. I have not heard anything. It can't go on living like that. The rest of the world is adjusting. We need to too.
Anyone else?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.